All right. So I made it on the live stream. Hi, everyone. This is Shannon Port, and I welcome you to the Art of the Feminine podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the Taurus Full Moon. And so I just shared this on Facebook, on my Facebook page, and on the Art of the Feminine page. So I'm going to see if anyone gets it and comes on. It's so Mercury retrograde right now. There's so many tech things happening as I was getting ready to do this. So here we are. Nice to see you. Oh, it's so nice to see you, Lucas. All right, so we'll get started. And this is one of my very favorite videos to do every year. I love the Taurus full moon. I love this time of year. Here where I live, it's fall. And a lot of you guys know that I'm a Taurus, and I have a lot of lessons in Taurus as well. I have my South Node in Taurus, or in my second house, and I have other energies in Taurus that are really coming into focus in this lifetime. And so good to be here. So glad some of you could catch me live. So today we have an action-packed video, and I'm going to try to live stream, I should say. I'm going to try to really pack a lot in a short amount of time. I'll tell you what, the focus of the video is on values and the massive shift that we're experiencing on planet Earth and in humanity in our values. This is huge, and it's so connected to Taurus. And we're going to talk a little bit about what some of those values are that we're shifting and changing and moving into. And so I'm going to give you an idea where we're headed, and then we'll dive right in. If you are new to my work, my name again is Shannon Port, and I run a platform called Art of the Feminine, and it is for men and women and everyone in between, no matter what you identify with as a human being. Art of the Feminine is about alchemy, and it's about the divine feminine wisdom and the sacred wisdom that's really awakening in the heart of the earth and humanity at this time. So we focus on what I call the archetypal wisdom, and it's where I've placed my efforts in my meditation, in my work, in my study, my teaching and writing for the past many years, at least 19 years solid now. So we look at astrology from a very very mainstream as well as unique perspective. We look through the lens of the archetypes as they represent the psyche of the human race. So, and there's so many things we're going to talk about today that have to do with that, because I got some great emails right before this video. The zodiac, when I look through it, I'm looking at the collective mind stuff and the archetypal energies and how they interact with each other. Through the perspective that I take in this divine feminine version of astrology, we look through the sun. We also look through the relationship of the lunar and the solar principle, and how they merge into sacred union, and how spirit and matter are doing their inner marriage and their outer marriage at this time on the planet. And so we look at through the perspective of living in the heart and living in the solar light, so that everything can come into harmony and balance, and that we're never static or stuck based on astrology. This isn't as much predictive or doom and gloom as it is understanding the archetypal elements of our mind and our heart and our physical being and how they're changing. So that being said, these are the things that are some of the three main events that are happening right now that we're going to touch upon. They're all big. We're going to talk a little bit about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening in Capricorn. We're already in it, and we're moving. In fact, we're really in it now, but we're moving closer and closer as we get to January and then all of 2020. Everybody's talking about it. I'll give you my perspective. I just did a video on it, but we'll bring that into this video. It's actually trining, the conjunction is trining the sun, the full moon right now. So it's very powerful. That conjunction, we have Saturn at 21 degrees right now, and we have Saturn at 18 degrees Capricorn and Pluto at 21 degrees Capricorn right now, trining the full moon in Taurus. And so it's a powerful positive energy right now, kind of preparing us for it. We're going to talk a little bit about Jupiter transiting the galactic center and what that means for all of us. That is a really beautiful energy. The galactic center represents the womb, it represents our heart, it represents the womb of this system, the womb where the quintessence light, the light from beyond physical matter and the physical plane comes through that portal where it comes through and acts upon our consciousness as it is in a more dense reality, in a more dense state. It's to harness the energy of above, of the divine plane, and use it to activate our consciousness and our values and our idea of what we are, our ability to listen, to speak, to create in this reality. So Jupiter, which is a very, very healing energy and expanding energy, will be at the galactic center. And we'll talk about that. We're also going to look at the Mercury transiting the face of the sun on 11/11, which is tomorrow. The 11/11 portal, which we look at every year just because it has significant energy. It always happens in the sign of Scorpio on November 11th, the 11th month and the 11th day. So tomorrow, Mercury is going to be transiting the face of the sun. We'll go into that a little bit. On Art of the Feminine on the Facebook page, I posted a really nice article that talks about the astrological and astronomical details of that transit. But here we'll look at it from an archetypal perspective, and so it will be. We're going to talk about the power of it and how we can use it, how we can harness it. So we're also going to talk about the archetypes of Taurus, which are so dear to me. So I have my sun in Taurus, and I've done a lot of work with the Empress and Venus, and a lot of work with the Hierophant, which represents the archetype Taurus and what it stands for. So we're going to look at those archetypes as well. And then we will really look at the values on Earth and how and why they're changing. And I invite you guys, anyone who's seeing this even after, to talk to me, and I'd love to hear your ideas, what you're seeing in your inner circles and in your communities in a shift in values. We could not be incarnated at a more crazy time on this planet because of technology. Everything is so sped up. There's so much isolation. There's so much loneliness. There's so much addiction. There's so much haziness, and there's like this hypnotic trance and this feeling of being of not having any power. Now, we also have the positive of all of that, but we're going to address those things because the energy for the Taurus full moon is all about creating new values and understanding that we do have power. We have so much power. I feel so positive at this time because the things that are happening in the outer world are happening so that we wake up. We can take it either way. We can use them to really bury ourselves in matter and lose touch with the profound gifts that we come in with. We are all already risen. The resurrection has already happened within us, that we've already created the archetype that we're stepping into, which is the archetype of understanding love and of understanding our creative power and our co-creative powers with the source of everything. And so we're going to look at that because it's really important right now. Community is important. Hi, good to see you. Community is more important than ever. And I want to say, in fact, I want to ask you guys about this because I feel like I want to start a community at Art of the Feminine, the Facebook page. There's about 100,000 people there. And I feel like what I'm hearing from everybody is that people are craving community. Like, people are craving just a place to be where they feel like they resonate with other people and where they have the opportunity to even meet with people who they're different from, but to just feel like they're there for a unified purpose. I just read a book called The Power of Habit, and it's a really great book. And but this is also coming to me through other streams right now, that when people change habits and they make their new keystone habits, which can project their life into a completely new reality, the number one factor in being able to create the new reality is, first of all, your beliefs. But the other thing that is equally as important is feeling like you're supported. And so it's been proven. There's a lot of scientific research being done now with communities like the 12-step programs, with churches. When people join churches and they all of a sudden are taking on a philosophy and an ideology of a group, and they all join together in it, there's a power that becomes of that makes you feel like you can do anything. It's like when you fall in love and all of a sudden all your limitations fall away. It's like all of a sudden you feel like you're connected to another heart, and it opens you wide up. And so community is one of those values I wanted to talk about. It's huge for Taurus. Taurus represents the home. It represents our sensual and material surroundings on earth, and what makes us feel good, what makes us feel satisfied in the outer world. We have our inner world. We talked about that at the Scorpio new moon, but we have to have the outer support as well. And so community is really important for that. And I'd like to hear your ideas on that. I don't know how I would like to do that, but I think anyone that has access to a lot of people, if you feel inspired, it's not about, I don't want to start anything with a limiting belief system. I want to start something where there's a place to go, where we celebrate humanity and where differences make no difference. The difference is, as long as there's a place where we choose to see each other, and of obvious things like there's no harm done, or there's no, there's no tearing down, then it's positive. We're being forced to do that right now in the outer. What's happening is, I was just talking to somebody about this. Oh, I'm going to look at your comments in just a second. So what's happening is that we're being forced to do this because boundaries and borders are being broken down. There's some shadow reasons for that, and there's some positive reasons for that. But the outer agenda, we have to look past it now and find the truth. There will always be these outer agendas, these dark agendas that want to control, manipulate, that aren't about elevating the human spirit. I'm going to teach in here some things that came into me about how to look past those and use them. So, okay, I'm going to get started. Good to hear it. Okay, let me just take a peek at this. We're all particular, lat longitude, and certain distances away are called Lagrange points. Oh, wonderful. Yes, where objects orbiting tend to get stuck. Absolutely. There's on the planet, there's specific coordinates. Some are more vortexes and portals. You might call them stargates, and others are places where there's a lot of like anomaly and a lot of stuck energy. And we can do a video about that in the future if you'd like to. But still, what we're talking about today, we can look beyond that. We can neutralize those places where we get stuck very powerfully. Okay, I want to dive right in. All right, let's look at the planets. We'll look at the planets. We're going to look at where the planets are, and that always opens up some information. And then we'll go into some of these things. And I really am excited to talk about Taurus and values. So, all right, we have the full moon at 19 degrees. So 19 degrees is a degree of the sun. 19 in the archetypes is the sun. It's powerful that the full moon is in Taurus at 19 degrees. As always, you can find out what house that falls in for you. And this is a time of culmination and of things birthing and being in their fullness. So whatever, for me, it's in my 10th house, which is kind of exciting. It's the area of where I put myself out into the world. So the full moon is happening there in Taurus for me. So it's at 19 degrees. It's conjunct Vesta. So Vesta is Vesta represents the divine feminine energy of keeping the fire and the sacred flame burning within. So first of all, we have to say that the moon is elevated, is exalted in Taurus. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the moon. Freeze to death every night. Oh, okay. Without so much liquid water affected by such a large moon, we would freeze. Yeah, absolutely. And somebody wrote me an email. I'm going to talk about this today on the video. I got this right before we started, asking if the moon was a satellite or if it was, information has been out there for a long time, but she was asking me and she was embarrassed to ask it, but I would like to address this today. I'll address it through my filter. And the information I have is the moon an artificial satellite that is orbiting in our Earth, controlling us. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard point of view. And I'm going to address it from the divine feminine perspective today because the moon, absolutely, I'm glad you mentioned that, Lucas. The moon absolutely has an effect on the ocean tides. We call it in esoteric work, we call the moon the tides. It waxes and it wanes. It brings in the energies. It harnesses energy from above, and it harnesses and even, you could say, manipulates energy below it in the plane that we are exist in. So it has an effect on water, and it's connected to our subconscious mind. And that's why the moon, there's all kinds of conspiracies about the moon, because the moon is connected to the darkest part of our own being that controls and manipulates us. And that is accessed through what we would call fourth dimensional energies, where the power of our wounds and our unconscious belief systems bind us and manipulate us and control us. Some people have called this the body of pain or the pain body, but it's very much connected to the moon. And the moon is Luna. And you've heard the term lunatic, meaning the moon can have a very, very negative effect on our psyche if you've ever been caught up in it. And anyone who works in an emergency room can validate that. We also know the moon, it has an effect on vegetation. That's why it's exalted in Taurus. Taurus rules growth and fertility of the earth. So we'll get back to that in just a moment. But it represents our the pulling of the tides of the mind as well as the oceans. It's the tides. So Vesta is the flame. So it shows that this full moon it's activating our flame. It's saying you are the alchemist. Vesta's the alchemist. She's the high priestess and the alchemist. The moon in the archetypes is also key to the high priestess. So the high priestess working in the sign of Taurus, which is the Hierophant, but it's also ruled by Venus, the Empress. We have the two most divine feminine archetypes together at this sign, at this full moon. The full moon is also trining Neptune. Neptune is in Pisces at this time at 15 degrees, or I'm sorry, sextiling. There's a sextile of the full moon to Neptune in Pisces, which is really spiritual. It's really opening the waters and the beautiful harmonious flow of divine love, of healing. Water represents healing. Water and fire represent healing, but water represents healing our heart and healing our subconscious mind where our wounds are. So it represents the cleansing, refreshing waters that can come in and be regenerated and be revitalized. So Pisces, Neptune and Pisces sextiling the full moon is really, really beautiful. The energies are stirring, and yes, they are. And someone just said this is really stirring, happening about 3 years ago. Yeah, there is a lot of rage right now, and I want to talk about that. There is a lot of rage in the collective, but we're going to talk about that and how we can help to soothe that and neutralize that without having to sacrifice ourselves or compromise our own being, because we at this point we shouldn't have to do that any longer. So we're going to talk about that. So, all right. Uranus is also in Taurus. That's why we're talking about shifting values. Uranus is shaking up the second house, and Taurus, it's shifting what we value. A lot of people feel that the Saturn-Pluto conjunction will be the restructuring, the fall of the financial system, but a regenerating and a restructuring of new financial system. And of course, we have to go into kind of the 3D mentality to understand that, because there's a lot of manipulation in that area, which is very 3D, meaning it's very human egoic consciousness. But we're also adding the light of the higher consciousness right now to understand our true currency that we talked about in the Scorpio new moon is our inner power and our inner ability to create. Scorpio and Taurus on this axis are about inner power, outer material wealth, inner strength and power. And so we're going to be forced to, through some of the collapses of things, to find each other. Like, we just have to find each other. Yeah. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. All right, so Uranus is going to shake things up. We'll talk about Uranus. Uranus is going to be stationing direct at the time of the Pluto-Saturn conjunction on January 12th, with the North Node as a Cancer. We have Juno in Libra, opposite Chiron. Juno represents relationships, opposite Chiron. This is about healing and healing our relationship with each other. That's the way I see it. We also have Mars in Libra at 25 degrees Libra, squaring Pluto at this time. And yes, squaring Pluto, closer to Pluto. Pluto's at 21 degrees Capricorn. So that's a pretty strong energy. At the time of the full moon, it will have already grazed past the tight conjunction, but it's still very much in there. In fact, it's 3 degrees, and so 3 or 4 degrees. So it's still active. Mars is the tower, and Pluto is judgment. And so the tower and judgment are both bringing things down, or they're deconstructing things, dismantling things. So there is some dismantling energy moving on. And that's the dismantling of, and I'm excited to talk about healing relationships more. That's the dismantling of the belief that we ever were not the identity of who we really are. The belief that we were not ourself, and that we were not the divine, the Christ force of the son, or the son and the daughter of creation, cannot be true. By the laws of nature, the divine laws of creation, we could never be anything other than that. I am that. As all the Eastern teachers have always said, I am that. I am that. And that is the truth. So we've got Mercury. Okay, now let's jump to Scorpio. We've just had a lot of energy in Scorpio over the past month, but we have Mercury at 17 degrees, retrograde, hence all the technology emails I've been getting this week. 17 degrees conjunct the sun. The sun is opposite the full moon, and the sun is at 19 degrees Scorpio. Again, powerful degree. And 17 degrees for Mercury is the star. I love to look at the archetypal numbers because they always kind of open a little bit of a book of wisdom on what's happening. Mercury conjunct the sun, and Mercury is going to be transiting the face of the sun. So let's just take a moment and talk about that. Or actually, we'll come back to it. Let's get through the planets and we'll come right back to that. So Mercury conjunct the sun in Scorpio, opposite the full moon and Vesta. This is all really powerful energy. It's really, it's like we're honing our faculties, our inner faculties, to have true perception, true feeling, true healing, true understanding. This axis as a Scorpio Taurus, inner power, outer power, and how that ties into our values around relationships and community. Venus is in Sagittarius, squaring Neptune. There's a lot of Neptune energy at the time of the full moon. There's a lot of Neptune. Venus will be squaring Neptune. Neptune is in Pisces at 15 degrees. Venus in Sagittarius, very alchemical degree for her to be at. She'll be conjunct my Mars. I definitely like that. So Venus in Sagittarius, let's just take a moment with that. Well, there's wisdom, there's truth, there's higher wisdom, higher knowledge, there's justice. But she's also bringing in Venus is very alchemical herself. Venus is the ruler of the full moon. So she's in a very alchemical sign, Sagittarius, which is about the alchemy of the light and the dark and the admixture that we create. And so Venus, the ruler of this full moon being in the sign of Sagittarius, is significant. It's like Venus in Sagittarius is like Vesta. She's like a keeper of the flame. Venus changes according to every sign she goes into. When Venus is in Sagittarius, she's like a keeper of the flame, and she's squaring Neptune, that spiritual energy that's actually sextile the full moon. So we also have Mercury and the sun are also trine to Neptune, just at more Neptune energy. Mercury and the sun in Scorpio are trine Neptune at the time of the full moon. So that's 3 major places where we have Neptune. Okay, Lilith conjunct Neptune. True Lilith is at 16 degrees Pisces, conjunct Neptune. I don't know if I want to go into that. So that just on an archetypal level, well, it's spiritualizing the darker side of all of us, the power of all of us. It could be a loss of consciousness around that dark energy, but I actually, because it's trining the full moon, it looks pretty positive. She's at 16, and 16 is the tower. So 16 is a dismantling kind of degree, a sort of breaking up and a bringing in of the spirit. But that's a significant aspect to look at. So Jupiter, 25 degrees Sagittarius, conjunct the galactic core. With Ceres at 28 degrees Sagittarius. So let's just take a moment with this. Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, about healing, expansion, spiritual energy, and divine love, um, conjunct the galactic center. So that representing an elevation of our heart energy. It's the higher heart energy. Let me see if there's anything else around that. Okay, no, just Jupiter conjunct Ceres is the mother energy. The archetype of Ceres represents the mother. I talked about that a lot in the last video I did, but this is just, it's good all the way around. It's beautiful, and I'll probably be talking about it more in the next couple of videos. But that's where Jupiter is, and then we have Saturn at 18. And Pluto conjuncting Capricorn. We've talked a lot about Capricorn. We'll talk a little bit more. And they are squaring Eris in Aries. We've talked a lot about Eris, the goddess of discord. Okay, so let's jump into these archetypes. Okay, the Empress. Let's talk about values in the Empress. If anyone wants to add anything about values, please do. So just gonna tune in, get a little closer here. All right, so the Empress. The Empress is Venus. She is the Hebrew letter Dalet. Dalet represents the door into matter and the door out of matter. So if you're talking about consciousness coming in, there was something else. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. There's one other thing I'm going to touch on before I get too deep into this. She rules the coming and going of consciousness into the denser form and into the more ascended, elevated form. This is what I want to say. I haven't mentioned yet. Mercury transiting the sun. Tomorrow on 11/11. 11/11 is a portal. 11 is justice. 11 two times is quite powerful. It's 4 ones, which is 4 magicians. 4/11, first of all, this is great. 11 is 1111. The magician is 1. It's the male force. The 1 is the power of focus, the power of the mind, and the power of us to discern and choose. So this is how you guys can harness, this is coming through me, but this is how you can harness the energy. A few people asked me about how can I harness the energy of this transit? Just see it as power. The sun is the limitless light. The sun is the gold currency. The sun represents the sunlight fluid of creation. It's the substance. And the substance can mix with matter, and then it can go way, 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 way beyond where it's off the chart, where it doesn't even register as consciousness or matter. It's so far beyond. But Mercury transiting the sun is a mixture of the inner, and it's retrograde in Scorpio. So it's pointing to inner power. Mercury retrograde transiting the face of the sun is a boost of consciousness and our ability to direct consciousness. Yeah, and I always forget to say this, but let me know where you guys are at. I always love to know where people are tuning in from around the globe. But this is the power of this. It's Mercury transiting the face of the sun is about, it's for the people, it's for us, it's for the collective awakening of our inner magician. Mercury is the magician. The sun is 19, and this Taurus full moon is at 19. Is at 19 degrees Taurus, and the sun is at 19 degrees Scorpio. This is really positive energy. And I want to shift the focus right now. There's so much talk about the things that aren't positive, but I really want to start to, what's coming to me now after months and months of really looking at what's going on is that things are more positive than we realize. Yes, there is an outer, egoic, dark force that's constantly bombarding humanity and playing little games. How can we control? How can we this? How can we groom people into this? But there's too many people now that are so awake. I've mentioned the millennials too. I just don't. I feel like there's more positive things happening than we're giving credit to. So I really want to say that I know that there's been a lot of isolation, a lot of addiction, a lot of loneliness, a lot of feeling duped, or feeling like nothing we believed in worked out, or like all these spiritual teachings, what are they anyway? They're all falling apart. It's kind of meant to be that way. And Neptune shows us that, because ultimately everything we used as a life raft is kind of floating away so that we can find a new life raft, and meaning to survive and navigate the times. And I think what that is our ability to love each other and to stop fighting. I was thinking about it yesterday, how insane, when you look at history, and you realize how much humanity has tortured each other, like how much we've tortured each other and how much we've killed each other. It's insane. What kind of species would do what we've done to each other? It's not even fathomable that a species that is a God source would treat each other the way we treat each other. It's all a bad dream. And I know I'm being dramatic, but this is what I was shown. We're going to talk. Taurus represents hearing and our ability to hear. So that's what I'm going to get into in just a moment. We have to hear the truth of our inner teacher. When you hear the truth of your inner teacher, and we're going to talk about the moon and everything else, you will know that this is all a mistake. All of it's a misunderstanding and what could be called an error of judgment. Judgment is all over the Pluto-Saturn conjunction. We're healing our judgment. We're deciding to choose again. I have to tell you, when you have an opportunity to feel love and joy with other people, whether it's your family, whether it's love, whether it's a good friend, or whether it's a community of people like your newfound spiritual community or your 12-step group or whatever it is, everything melts away. And why aren't we doing that? Why we're so connected on social media, but we need more deliberate places where people can just go and just commune with each other. Because when we do that, and there's some ground rules that there's no fighting, and there's whatever, all the lower stuff, we can be healed so quickly, and we can realize our power together to create things. So that being said, okay, I was going to jump back to, let's look at Venus, and then we'll talk about the moon. We'll talk about the moon now. So Venus, the ruler of Taurus, is the Empress, and she's fertility, and she's also the projection of the dream. So this sign and this energy teaches us that we project the images on the screen. Vision, hearing, speaking are creating the projection on the screen. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because obviously if you're just in a 3D consciousness, that could seem threatening. That could seem like you're in denial, you're bypassing, you don't even want to see the truth. Not at all. We need to see the truth, because we can't turn our back on the truth of this, because we created it. But what we can do is, Jupiter entering Capricorn is going to be fantastic. It's going to expand everything. But and Jupiter is connected to, I'll tell you why. Jupiter is connected to Venus, because Venus is key 3, the Empress. 3 is the number of Jupiter. Jupiter is the number of the wheel of the fortune, and Venus turns the wheel. Venus projects the dream onto the screen of reality. That's why she represents all the goodies that we get in the material world, because we create them, and we're relying on others to create them. And what happens the moment we do that? We lose power. I'm just going to take a step back for that and take a breath. The moment that we demand that someone else create for us, we hand over our own sovereignty. What is the mistake that's happened is that, oh, nice to see you from Sweden and UK. Let me know where you guys are tuning in from. Nice to see you, Irene. So we hand over our power, and we do it subconsciously, and that's the power of the moon. The darker side of the moon wants you to hand over your power to create, so that you're just stuck in the matrix, you're stuck in the system, and that's an awful place to be. And I have spent a lot of time understanding this for myself. I have my sun in Taurus. I have also other heavy energies that have to learn Taurus. My South Node is in the second house. Understanding how to create and heal in this world has been a lifetime of work for me. And I know the pain of feeling at certain times like you didn't have the power to create. And what all of that journey has taken me to is an absolute belief. I'm worried about poor little Ceres getting sandwiched between Jupiter and Saturn. I talk about Ceres. That's funny. I talk about Ceres at the time of the conjunction. And so it's important. She's actually conjunct, I think, the South Node in Jupiter, but I can't remember. All right. So I want to continue on with this. Let's talk about the moon. We're going to talk for a few minutes about the moon. And then I've got to start to close out. So the moon being a satellite. So this is what I want to say about that. So I got this email from someone, and I was hoping you would join in the video today, but I'm going to also answer the email because it's someone in one of my groups. Is the moon a satellite, an artificial satellite that's there to control us? Now, I can't touch that. I don't know. And I don't think anybody really knows. In my work is with the archetypal wisdom, and the archetypes being a projection from what is on the inside to what is on the outside. So from that perspective, we have a real moon. And as you mentioned, that moon is absolutely scientifically corresponds to the tides of the ocean, and metaphysically the tides of our body, which is, I forget what percentage water, like maybe around 90, but that I don't know for sure. So it's a huge percentage of water. Our brain is also pulled by the moon, and it connects to our subconscious mind. So the moon absolutely, for better or for worse, is the biggest power player on this earth. In esoteric wisdom, in the Kabbalistic tree of life, she's the gatekeeper of all the other Sephiroth. The moon is Yesod, the ninth house, and that's why 9 often corresponds to the goddess. And she harnesses all the frequencies. She's like the prism that harnesses the rays and beams them in and beams them up. So that prism could be like an artificial prism, like a computer. That now I'm just playing from an archetypal perspective, because again, I'm not going to go either way. I'm open on that. But what it really represents is that the moon represents our wounded inner subconscious mind. So in that way, the wounded part of our subconscious mind is absolutely controlled by an archontic entity or force that's in the Gnostics teachings, that's in all of our scriptures, that there's this dark force that controls us. It's the dark force of our own underworld. And we have a part in creating that force or neutralizing that force. What I want to say is that the moon being exalted in Taurus, when you learn how to work with the tides of the moon, the tides, the waxing and waning, you can harness the positive energy. That's why I continue to do these videos on the moons, even understanding that a lot of people can get lost in that kind of energy if you don't have a true understanding about it. But within our subconscious mind, there's a higher lunar principle represented actually by our pineal gland, and there's a lower lunar principle. We have to when we understand the archetype, we don't have to be afraid of the moon. So the person who emailed me said a lot of people shut their blinds during the full moon, and and that can be said of eclipses as well. There are energies at the time of the moon and at the time of eclipses that can have an adverse effect on our mind and our psyche. But if you are tuned into the energies that we're talking about today, anything in creation can be harnessed for good. That's why, from the divine feminine perspective, from this perspective of what I call the Sophionic astrological work that I do at Art of the Feminine, we talk about harnessing the energies, having no fear. Fear has got to be, this is what I'm seeing in the world, and I've had my own fear. And I know I'm being pretty dramatic in this video, but it's so true. And I wanted the message on this platform to be enough already with the fear. The fear builds the bondage. It builds the walls, and it empowers whatever forces you believe are dark. The fear is going to empower those. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. And I think that was Winston Churchill, and there's all kinds of theories about him as well. But it's the truth. It really is. It's the truth. That's why community and our values, and our values are going to be changing as well. And we might not have a choice if the financial system was to just go. Well, we're just going to have to get creative. And that's what Taurus is all about. It's fertility and creativity of the Empress. It's about projecting a new reality. And I was telling I have a mentoring group going right now. It's called Light Body Woman. And we were talking about how the world is going to be what the world's going to be. There's always going to be you can't control the outer world. We can raise people up with what we've discovered on the inside. We can raise the people up around us and connect with the people who love us, and bless and forgive the people who don't love us. And there's so much more to say about that, but we got to move. The Hierophant is Taurus. It represents the Hebrew letter Vav. Vav is the nail, and the nail. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, the moon is about receptivity. The true inner moon is about being able to receive the rays, the positive rays. In fact, I just want to say one last thing on that. I can attest and affirm for sure that if you understand how to work with the tides of the moon, you can build. Now, the feminine lunar cycle is attached to the moon, and there can be good and bad things said about that, but that's where we are. And there's a creative power in understanding that. It doesn't, even if it was artificial, understanding is power. Truth and wisdom is power. So understanding it is better than having fear and shoving it aside. What we don't understand, we fear, always. When we don't understand somebody's choices, immediately red flags go up. In relationship, when we don't understand what our partner's doing, we have fear. When we don't understand addiction, we have fear around it. When we don't understand politics, and when we don't listen, we have fear. There's a saying, the Hierophant represents Vav, the Hebrew letter Vav. It nails together spirit and matter. So Taurus is the sign that represents spirit coming into matter, and Vav represents the nail that hammers it in. And so that nail can represent the nail in the cross. It can represent our crucifixion, which is an archetypal teaching on what happened when we went into matter, that spirit got nailed to the cross of matter. Or we can use that nail to bring spirit in and lift us to attach matter to spirit. It's all perspective. Are you nailing spirit to matter, or are you lifting matter up and attaching it to spirit so you can ascend and elevate? That's where we want it. All you have to do is switch the perspective. Everything that's dark is nothing but inversion of a higher truth. So Vav teaches us how to listen, hear. This is a teaching I want to leave on this video. It's so powerful. We only hear and heart, and I teach this a lot in Light Body Yoga when I teach Light Body Word. Hear, H-E-A-R, is heart, H-E-A-R-T. To hear opens the heart. If you're not hearing, you can't be open. So this is esoteric wisdom. When I listen to something and you listen to something, we hear it differently. We can learn to hear everything at a higher frequency. Depending upon how we hear something, it will either trigger us, our wound, and start a whole process that takes a lot of, consciousness to undo, or we can hear God source coming through sound, which is the highest vibration of creation. Sound creates light, creates matter. And when we hear, all of a sudden, we realize we were hearing incorrectly, even what we perceive as dark and negative. This is why it's dangerous if you go down anything conspiratorial, because once you start to get familiar with that, you hear it over and over and over and over, and you condition and program yourself. All these teachings about deprogramming are only another form of programming if it blocks our ability to hear. And we're only projecting that others are the bad guys. Others are going to suffer. Others are going to pay. Others are going to have justice. It's only half the equation. It's only half the equation. And I'm seeing right now, it's everywhere. It's so strong a hold. that people who really mean well get trapped and lose their ability to see and hear. Our seeing and our hearing creates our reality. So what I wanted to say, that Anai Zin Yin, I said her name wrong, but this is that quote: we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. And that can change from moment to moment. In fact, it's nice to see you. Nice to see you on the live stream. So what we hear and see is our reality. Now, if I'm having a bad experience right now, there's something called sacred union. There's something called the holy instant. These things are all in all the traditions. I can shift that. I teach when people are working with me, to shift it with a breath or two. In fact, let's just take a breath. It's fun to breathe in through the nose and exhale through the mouth. When you're doing deep meditation, I keep it through nostril breathing, and just let the light in, let the true consciousness. That's Mercury transiting the sun. That's Jupiter at the galactic center. These alignments are awakening. They're not binding us into bondage. They are liberating us into truth. It's all how you look at it. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction is about bringing in the last judgment, which is the truth and the final ascension. The last judgment, even if you look at the archetypes in the card, judgment is ascension. It's getting out of the coffins and raising into the higher astral light to realize we're not just this dense body. We're not, there is a reality all around us. I took this video way too long, but I'm going to start to close it out. The heart is listening. And Vav and Taurus teach us how to listen. And I agree about that. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I talk a lot. Lust is a big, 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 big part of my work. That's how we differentiate whether we're in the ego or the heart. But the lust for power and the lust for control on the outer, don't claim that. Claim the truth. Claim creativity. Claim your divine power to create. But we can only have that if we have truth through our brothers and sisters, meaning my eyes have to see you as part of me rather than condemning you, in order for what's called the Holy Spirit to activate that power. Here's a powerful note to end on. The Holy Spirit can give us the gifts, which is the Divine Mother. It's Shekinah, and it has a masculine, feminine counterpart to it, but the Holy Spirit gives us the gifts. And the dove of the Holy Spirit is represented in the archetype of the Empress, Venus, in Taurus. Taurus is the sign of the spirit connecting with matter. The Holy Spirit can only give us what we're willing to see, speak, and hear. So if you're speaking something that's not in alignment with the Holy Spirit, you've blocked yourself from receiving that spirit. The spirit is also the Divine Mother's dance and her sound frequencies that emanate from our heart through the Empress and create our reality. That is the Holy Spirit awakening through the heart, through Taurus, through Venus, and through all of it. And so, thank you. I'm going to close out. If there's any last question, and you can get it up in the next minute, I'll take it. But if you're catching the video afterwards, leave questions in the comments. I'll go back and look at the comments. I just want to wish you a huge blessing for the Taurus full moon on November 12th. All of this information is for the entire next year. So if you're seeing this video post Taurus full moon, it's all relevant. When we talk about the archetypal wisdom, it never expires. There's no expiration date. Also, I want to mention, if you, I'm doing a mentoring group right now, and we're halfway through it. First time ever I did a group, and this time it's an all women's group, but we're halfway through it. If you'd still like to join, you can join, because we have it all recorded. But I want to mention, I'm going to be doing it again in January 2020. So if you'd like to do it in the future, I'll be around in January 2020 for the conjunction. And so that being said, I just want to end with a final blessing for all of us. And I'm seeing I am in the 7 directions. Next video, we'll start with that. I just want you to know that I see myself in you and I reflect yourself back to you. And that's the truth of our reality. You're seeing the darkest, most negative beings on the planet. Just work with it. Rather than going into fear and spiraling, just work with it. Use the power we have rather than getting stuck in a false, fake prison. No longer. That way, blessings to you too, Jay. That way we can free everyone and lift everyone up and create a better world. And so I close out for today with namaste. Thank you for joining me live, and I will see you next time.